My name is Ryan Reagan with Alaska Department of Fish and Game Division of Sportfish, and in this video we're going to show you how to clean a spinning reel. The reel we're going to clean today comes from one of the rods that we use in our rod loaner program. Certain fish and game offices in Alaska do participate in the rod loaner program, which we've got different types of fishing gear to loan out to novice anglers free of charge. So if you know somebody who maybe wants to get into fishing, who doesn't want to incur the initial expense of it, send them to Fish and Game office. They can call their local office and find out if they participate in the rod loaner program, or we're going to leave a link to participating offices in the description of this video. So let's get started cleaning this reel. The components we're going to use today to clean this reel are: one, we're going to use a spray degreaser. You can also use isopropyl alcohol if you don't have any of this stuff. I bought these components at my local sporting goods store. They just come as a reel cleaning kit. Next thing you want is some grease and a little bit of oil, a small brush, a toothbrush would be fine, even a toothpick. Some folks use Q-tips even to do this, and then of course a screwdriver to remove any screws. This particular kit does come with this cleaning pad here. I doubt I'll use it, but it does have that. More so what I'll use are just napkins, paper towels, anything like that. And the main thing is you're going to get some grease on your workspace, so we've put just some paper down here to help alleviate cleanup. In order to get started cleaning this reel, first thing we need to do is we need to remove the reel handle here, and we're going to start doing that by removing this little knob, which is on the opposite side. And you're going to find that as we go through this cleaning process, there's going to be a lot of small parts, so make sure you're keeping track of those. Now, to get the reel handle off, the reel handle will spin two ways here. One would be forward, and the other is backwards. So if I try to spin it backwards, it sort of locks. But in order to get the reel off, I'm going to spin it all backwards there, and then keep going until the handle essentially comes out. You'll see the handle is just threaded in there. So now that we've got that off, what we can do is we can remove the spool. This little knob right here controls the drag, and if you turn it counterclockwise on this particular reel, you'll notice that this little knob will just come off. So this is how we remove the spool. Once that knob's been removed, I'm going to set that aside, and the reel just pulls off. Now what you've got here is you've got this little pin, and you've got some drag components down in here. We're going to go ahead and clean these guys up. We will be cleaning that, and we're also going to be cleaning the spool. You can see here that there's some dirt and other stuff in there. And I want you guys to notice here too that inside of this spool, and one of the reasons I chose the spool, is inside of that spool is some excess monofilament that, as somebody was using this reel, got caught in there, and in all likelihood they just cut their line, retied, and went fishing. But this is important because sometimes this will happen, so we're going to remove that here eventually. Once we've done that, what we can do here is we can talk about this right here, which is the bail. We will be cleaning and oiling that here in a second, and we also will be removing this little plate in here to access the gears which are positioned in there. But before we do that, let's go ahead and clean up this spool, and then we'll clean up the other components step by step. All right, so I've got the spool here in my hand. What we're first going to do is reach in here, and we're going to pull out all this excess line that was trapped in there. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and dispose of that. Now you'll notice in here there's a small spring, and there's some other components in here. You can see that some of those are greased. That's just from the factory. And so first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our degreaser. We're going to take our degreaser. We're just going to spray a little bit onto a napkin. You can use a dish rag. You can use whatever type of fabric you want in order to clean this. And all I'm doing is really just going in there and just cleaning that section out there. I just want to remove all the dirt, all this stuff on the side. All right, so you're going to notice that as you go forward, you're going to have to fold this over a little bit, probably reapply some of your cleaner. Main thing you're just trying to do is get all that grease and dirt out of there. Once I've reached that point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my brush, come in here and just kind of run that around. Try to get some of those where the grease and other dirt could just get trapped in those small crevices. You can do this with a toothbrush. You don't have to use a little brush like this. Any sort of stiff bristled brush will do the job there. You'll notice on this particular spool there are some dings. Again, these things get used quite a bit, as I'm sure your gear does as well. And there's a little bit of stuff on that. This particular brush happens to have a little scraper on the back end. I'm going to come in here and just scrape that stuff off. The main thing we want to make sure is there's no debris in there or even lint from our rags or towels. So just come in there and brush all that stuff off. If you really want to give a thorough job, you can even soak these in some type of degreaser, but we're not going to go that far. I don't think it's necessary with that reel. So spool looks fairly clean. It's good enough right now. We're going to set that one aside, and we're going to start working on the reel body itself. You can see this reel's just got some dings in it. Again, that's just from overall usage. Doesn't necessarily affect the performance. But again, I'm just taking my napkin or my rag and I'm spraying that degreaser on it. And we're coming in and we're just cleaning this stuff up as best we can. And we'll come in and just clean that bail up a little bit. Again, we're just removing any sort of mud or any other type of debris that happens to just be caked on there. And you're just overall looking for the reel itself, making sure at this point all we're going to do is just clean it up as best as we can. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to open this faceplate up here, and you'll need a little, in this case, a Phillips head screwdriver. Sometimes what you'll find is that when you remove these faceplates, there are different lengths of screws. So if that is the case, you just want to make sure that whatever screw you remove goes back into the hole that it came out of. With these reels, all of these screws are all the same length, so I can just simply put them all next to each other on my table here. With the final screw removed, we're just going to go ahead and pull that plate off gently. And you can see that exposes the internal gears here. Now, these still do have some factory grease on them, and one thing we're not going to do is we're not going to remove everything and soak it in degreaser and really give it a thorough washing. It's just not really necessary for the reel for this particular reel, the conditions that it's in. But what I will do is I'll come in here and I'll try to remove just any type of debris that's in there. We're going to apply more grease to this, but before doing so, I'm simply just going in there and seeing if there's any type of debris that needs to be removed. And one thing I will focus on is up here, there can be some debris that can get caught in there. So again, just taking my brush, removing that stuff. So with this particular reel, I am able to pull that main gear out just a little bit and just kind of get back in there with my brush, clean it up. Any type of debris that remains, I'll just simply wipe off. Now, if you were really going to give a thorough job to this, you'd pull all those components out. Again, we're not going to do that. It's just not necessary for this particular reel, the conditions that it's in. So now that we've done that, what we can do is we can take our reel grease here, and we'll just want to make sure that we're greasing some of the main points of friction. So anywhere the teeth meet, I'm going to add some grease there. Anywhere there's parts that move up and down, which in this case there are, you'll notice this component right here will move up as I spin the bail, and that exposes another gear, which is right here. So, and there's also a small bearing right here. What we'll just simply do with that is come in here, clean any type of debris out of there. Make sure both sides get attention. And I'll take, instead of putting grease down in there, I'll take a little bit of a little oil, come in there, just kind of put a little bit in there on both sides. When we return the faceplate back to its original positioning, we just simply turn that around and make sure that the original screw holes line up, and they do. So we'll just go ahead and put that back together. We've got a little grease on the outside of this reel here. That's okay. We're going to clean that up, and in fact, when we're all done with this, we'll spray this down with a little bit of degreaser and make sure the outside is clean. But now that we have this exposed, we can add some grease in here. And again, I'm not going to remove anything from here. I'm simply just going to come in and lubricate this pin. A little bit of grease there, a little there. You can come in here and put a little oil right in there. Okay, now that we've got this, we're going to go ahead and put the spool back on, but the first thing we need to do is make sure our components on the spool are lubricated. So we'll come in and take that spring, we'll go inside there with a little bit of oil. You come up here, I put a little bit of oil in there, as well as a little bit of grease. And when you put your spool back on, you're going to lay it there, and basically when you see your spool there, there's some flat edges there. And if it doesn't go on exact, you want it to fall on that pin so it's in place like that. And I'll even come in here and grease that component a little bit. Same thing here. Just going to come in here, put a little grease in there. That grease just helps lubricate things, but it also helps control corrosion. So once we've got that taken care of, we're just simply going to take our drag knob, put it there, and twist it down. Once you put new line on this, you can, and you're fishing, you can adjust your drag to where it needs to be. I'll just put it there for now. Make sure the drag knob's clean. We're going to come in here, we're going to take care of that bail a little bit more. Now we're not going to remove these screws here on the bail, but we are going to lubricate these components in here. So simply I'm going to do that by opening the bail up, and you can see here that that's where your points of contact are. So we'll come in there with a little bit of that oil. And now that it's in there, I can just simply move it back and forth to help that oil disperse anywhere it needs to go. You could pull this off and clean that up a little bit, but again, this reel, the condition that this reel's in probably doesn't warrant that. We're mainly focused on the internal components here. After everything has been applied, we'll just come in here, clean that up a little bit. And you can spend as much time making your reel pretty and shiny as you want, but at this point I think I'm good. So one thing I'll do is, before applying the reel handle back, I'll put a little bit of grease on that. And right in there, lubricate that up just a bit, actually with the oil. I'm going to lubricate that with oil. And I'm going to come in here. And in order to put it back on, you reel forward with this particular reel handle. There's a couple small ones there. It should thread right in there. Tighten it down by just grabbing your bail, tightening it down, make sure that's been lubricated. And that's it. Our reel's nice and clean now. We're ready to go fishing or to store this for the winter time. We'll come in here, make sure everything is tightened up again. And what I'll do is I'll spend just another minute or two cleaning this up, but for all purposes, this reel is good to go. Now that we've cleaned our reel, we've added a fresh set of monofilament line on here, and we're ready to go fishing. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you on the water.